This video is crazy, ladies and gentlemen. A man pulls up to block a woman driving a Tesla and starts punching her in the face. You can't really see anything. Heads up, because we don't like showing that crazy violent stuff. But listen to this report. This is from azfamily.com.
Flagstaff, which is crazy.
Flagstaff. Watch this.
This is video of a Tesla attack in Flagstaff last week. It shows a green car pulling up next to a Tesla on busy Route 66, then swerving in front to box the vehicle in. The driver then walks over to the 61-year-old woman in the Tesla and reportedly starts hitting her while she's behind the wheel.
I started to say, "You cut me off. What's your problem?" But I don't know how much of that got out, and he started to punch me with a closed fist.
At one point, the victim, who wants to hide her identity, says she bit the man's hand. Moments later, the passenger of the green car appears to walk over and pull the attacker away. They finally get back in their car and drive off. The incident is among the latest attacks on Arizona Tesla drivers, being targeted because of the car they drive.
This is crazy.
It's insane.
I just want to point out.
Absolutely insane.
What I wanted to point out right away is that they box her in. You can see that not only do they try to stop her, but when she tries to go right,
then walks over to the
they pull forward to make sure she's between the curb. I'm jumping that curb. I'm sorry. I don't know. It's a pretty tall curb right there, or I'm reversing, but I'm assuming she's got someone behind them. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe we can see in the video.
Woman in the
so in the rear, she's clear. She could have hit reverse and just got out of there. Mm-hmm. You know what's really crazy about this? Check this out. When they go on to mention another person is attacked, keep listening.
Moments later, the passenger of the green car.
Oh, actually, I don't think I actually have that in the video. In the full report, they mention these two women are now taking gun self-defense classes.
Yeah.
The next time some guy tries pulling something like that off, they're gonna get shot.
And depending on where they live, they're going to run their own risk, because it's so hard to know whether you're actually going to get in trouble for using your weapon.
I guess they'll have to figure out what the law is too.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be after the fact. I mean, look, a 61-year-old woman getting punched in the face. If she had a gun, she'd shoot him.
Well, these leftist guys are the same ones that have been saying punch a TERF for years and punch Nazis. And now Nazis are people who drive Teslas that they bought in order to help the environment and be environmentally friendly.
Not knowing when they bought it.
Nazis, Nazis love green energy.
If the roles were reversed, we would never hear the end of this. It would be on MSNBC, CNN, relentlessly. If there was any sort of far-right attack on someone because of their
some lady in her car.
I mean, it's such an absurdity that these people think it's appropriate to punch someone who's got nothing. The driver of the Tesla might actually be a Democrat.
Yeah, probably.
What do they know?
Well, I mean, the people who are buying electric cars probably were leaning left in the first place.
Quite.
And it's not like all of the people driving Teslas bought them in the last month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Quite.
I'm curious for you, Winston, based on what we're seeing here. Have you ever seen anything as bad as this directed, targeted attacks sustained?
In America or in Britain?
America.
Directed at individuals. I mean, the worst, it seemed to me, was in 2020. That was a real period. I mean, we talked about this a little bit earlier.
But 2020 was mass rioting, which is
over
violence.
months.
And then you had it culminate with the autonomous zones. But those were leftists against government. I'm wondering if, and I don't know, Libby and Brett, if you've seen anything, what we're seeing now is random attacks on people for political purposes if they can be identified, meaning the Tesla car itself is enough identification for these attacks to escalate on these individuals.
It's a good point. I remember in Portland, someone wearing a MAGA hat was killed. This is something that Andy No reported.
Aaron Daniels?
Was he?
Yes, that's right.
I think was it Danielson? I could be wrong. Was he wearing a MAGA hat?
He was Trump identified.
He's Trump identified.
Yeah.
So this is a clear difference, right? So it's no longer, we don't need to identify what their politics are.
And there have been attacks at Republican polling stations and stuff like that in the past. I think the difference between this and 2020 is that 2020 was less focused, and it was just an outlet of anger. It didn't matter who it was. They were just going after any business that they felt like tearing down at the time, which is why businesses that wanted to survive had to put signs up in their window to please, please, please leave me alone. But at that same time, they were going up to random people and asking them to raise their fist in the air to force compliance on people because it was a form of power.
Yeah,
more
there
than
was
anything
definitely, in
else.
terms of like the attacks on Tesla cars, not just individuals, but Tesla cars. We did see, again, in 2020, we saw the attacks on statues, right? People were tearing down George Washington statues. People were so stupid that they were tearing down statues of abolitionists, saying, that they were racist. And it's like, really? Because they were abolitionists. It was Danielson.
They
Aaron
would still be
Danielson.
considered racist by today's standards.
The reason why I'm asking this is
Yeah,
I'm curious, Winston, your perspective on where this country goes. Obviously with the, Trump being criminally charged, but now he wins. Now the Democrats are saying what he's doing is unconstitutional. Now we have Elon who's working with Trump, and people are just either there's terror attacks against dealerships. They're physically attacking people. Do you see a scenario where things start to chill out maybe, or what do you think?
I think that the way it's heading is, and I note what I said earlier about no Democrats really calling this out, is that we might end up that something really awful happens. God forbid, I don't want it, but it would take something really awful, it seems, for Democrats to finally speak out against what's going out. And even then, to be honest, I'm not sure it would.
We heard
there's plenty of
Maxine Waters
examples.
talk. They're not going to change the rhetoric.
And there's plenty of what happened in 2020 that they didn't speak out, even when terrible evils were happening.
No, they put websites to bail people out in their bios, is what they did.
And Kamala
Kamala
Harris
did that,
promoted it.
Exactly.
But Tim, is your question because you think that we're in a particularly bad place? Is this where you're pushing me here?
Well, I'm curious.
I think this is really different this time.
The reason I wanted to ask before I gave my thoughts, because I didn't want to influence what your thoughts on this particular moment may be. Maybe, you'd say, look, I've seen stuff like this and, people are going to forget about Tesla or something like that. But I actually argued this is substantially worse in terms of the political escalation than we saw in 2020. And that's because we had this conversation a week or two ago. Is it worse now than it was in 2020? And I think it is worse. Certainly not the amount of violence occurring. It's the targeting attacks, the type of violence. So we have the mass swattings. You had 20 plus or more swattings targeting prominent right-leaning individuals. Now you have so it's scaling up in every tier of the right. At the lowest level, some woman, for simply having a Tesla, might not even be political, gets punched in the face repeatedly by a lunatic. Then you have the mid-tier, the influencers, getting swatted. You had Owen Schroyer brought out of his house with his hands up, and they told him to take his shirt off because the police are pointing guns at him, and cops don't know what's going on. Then at the highest level, of course, you have the administrative attacks, attempts to arrest and jail Trump and his people. But now that he won, that is being stopped by Trump at the highest level. Of course, we have a counter with Krispy Noem, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino. But in 2020 with the riots, it was random rage. People were mad about Trump. They're mad about lockdowns. They're mad about George Floyd. And they were going out and attacking random things.
And everything.
Anything and everything. They burned down buildings. They attacked random people. That is very, very bad in terms of the sheer violence. But a riot may not go anywhere, right? The riots happened, I think, largely because of COVID lockdowns, built up a lot of rage. The George Floyd story was the spark that gave people the excuse to go out and be angry. And they weren't overtly targeting people, though. There was one guy in Portland who got shot twice in the chest. And it was violent with the Chaz Chop, where they actually shot and murdered people, unloaded their rifles on some teenagers in an SUV. Crazy. What we're seeing now, though, in terms of political escalation is random street-level terror attacks, mid-level terror attacks in the digital space, bleeding into the physical space with swattings, mid-level terror attacks with fire bombs and mass shootings on dealerships. This seems to me worrying escalation where what happens when a leftist gets run over? Some guy already did that. He jumped the curb and drove through some protests against Tesla, and they got out of the way. He got charged. What happens when one of these individuals shoots one of the people that are attacking their vehicles? Then the left says, they're attacking us now. The fascists are attacking us.
What they did with Kyle Rittenhouse.
And that's what they did in Texas. Remember that situation in Texas?
Do you think, okay, so I have a question. Is part of this because I think a lot of this has to do with we live in a sick society and there's a lot of unbelievably emotionally dysregulated people who don't know how to control themselves and who suffer because they have been fed these lines about political opposition being evil. But I wonder if some of it has to do with the fact that there's just this directionless feel to the Democrat Party now, where they don't have anybody to coalesce around. They don't have any actual hope for their message. So they're sprouting. It's just violence
Well, it's
because
not
they
just-
don't have anybody that's giving them a message that they feel they can confidently take into the next election cycle to try and change the things that they, at least in their minds, feel are wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just violence, it's also haplessness, right? Like you see them saying Trump's going to take away our Medicare. That's not anywhere. Trump's going to destroy Social Security. That's not anywhere. They make stuff up because they don't have a policy platform and they don't have any leaders. The closest thing they have to a leader right now is like Jasmine Crockett. You know what I mean? And it's just because she's a big mouth and she's out there being loud.
Yeah. Hakeem Jeffries.
Hakeem Jeffries.
And they're all
maybe,
advocating for
but-
violence.
Yeah, they're all, Hakeem
Look,
Jeffries, we're going to take it to the streets. Maxine Waters is always about
She's
that.
always the worst.
We had one of the most shocking things I've seen was when on The Daily Show, Jordan Klepper showed terror attacks. One of the attacks on Tesla in Vegas was a man with a rifle shooting into the building, trying to take out its security cameras, then shooting wildly into a bunch of cars, graffitiing up the building, and then setting fire to a bunch of the vehicles. And when he showed this, the audience cheered for it. Mm-hmm. He even was shocked and said, wow, I guess you guys like petty acts of domestic terrorism.
Something very similar on Stephen Colbert at the same time,
Right.
by the way, where he made a joke like, don't attack Teslas, and then did a pause.
So that was Kimmel.
Sorry, it's Kimmel. Forgive me. It was Kimmel. But similar. Sorry.
But Colbert did also do something similar where he said he deserves, he said someone stole the tires off a vehicle, but he says, I don't attack I don't condemn the attacks, but I appreciate your tireless efforts, and wins a pun award. He said that I think it's wrong to attack Teslas, and this comes from the bottom of my CBS legal department, implying he doesn't actually, and they're cheering for these things. So I wonder, we are at a time in this country where in public people are cheering for terror attacks against anyone perceived to be right wing. Even if you're just driving a Tesla, which you probably bought well before Trump or Elon had anything to do with government.
Well, we have DHS and ICE doing this thing where they're scouring people's social media to determine if they are immigrants who advocate for violence or who are opposed to American values or whatever the criteria is. I wonder if they'll start doing that for the Tesla people and just start like arresting anti-Tesla people based on their social media posts.
And that will end up sparking concern from them in the same way, because they're going to say that you're being a fascist by arresting them.
Well, it is concerning to arrest someone based on a social media post alone, as we've seen in the UK.
Yes.
We've seen a lot of that, but they have to start arresting and having real justice put on these people doing these attacks, because that is what will deter others from doing it. If these people get away with it, and maybe it's the case that it will, if it's true about these activist judges, if they get away with it, this will just continue.
I wonder if that would be a deterrent. It certainly didn't appear to be a deterrent in 2020 when people got arrested.
I don't think it will.
Did they get charged, though? They got arrested, but did they get charged?
In a lot of cases, the charges were eventually dropped.
I don't think it ends up stopping anybody. I think so many of these people are so broken and so upset, and they feel so hopeless because of all of the rhetoric that they're spewed and fed every single day, that they're acting so irrationally that even a rational deterrent won't work on an irrational person.
Yeah, because they're going to cheer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if Donald Trump's DHS, a bunch of Nazi fascist brown shirts, go and arrest someone, they're going to say it's a badge of honor.
Well, and look at what happened to Luigi Mangione, right? He suspected of murdering this guy in cold blood. It's on camera in New York. And California named a health care bill after him.
Yeah.
It's being proposed.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
No
like
way.
the Luigi
Yeah.
Mangione Health Care Act.
It's penalties on if you delay, deny, or depose or whatever.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.